Thank you to my Asbantium level patron Flannan for helping to support the channel. So Doctor Who is known for its wacky and wild adventures throughout space and time. It's kind of the main attraction for the show, but during its long history, Doctor Who has always pulled from a lot of existing, real stories, with writers inspired by the true exploits of Romans and inexplicable disappearances. Of course, I'm not just talking about historical episodes where the characters simply end up involved with existing historical events, like the gunfight at the OK Corral for example. Those are a bit too obvious. But there are a lot of interesting influences that led to some of the most beloved Doctor Who stories, and I thought it would be a good idea to highlight that, because there's such a good history of those influences and low-key adaptations that a lot of people don't know much about. So from playwrights to pirates, let's take a look at some of the very real stories behind popular Doctor Who episodes. And of course be mindful of spoilers for these episodes. Horror of Fang Rock, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. One of the most intriguing mysteries I've ever come across is that of the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, which is a lighthouse within the Outer Hebrides off the coast of Scotland. It was built towards the end of the 1890s and first lit on the 7th of December 1899. However, just 1 year later, something weird happened that nobody can explain to this day. So at any one time, there were 3 men manning the lighthouse, with a 4th man on shore to make sure the light was working. However, on the 5th of December 1900, a passing steamer noted the light wasn't operational despite poor weather conditions. These kinds of conditions delayed the scheduled relief vessel for 6 days, meaning it only arrived at the lighthouse on Boxing Day of 1900. Upon arrival, the crew found none of the usual provision boxes ready for restocking, and unusually, none of the lighthouse keepers were there waiting for them. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, landed on the island alone to investigate, only to find the entrance gate and both main doors closed, the beds unmade, and the clock unwound. Along with this, there wasn't a single sign of any of the 3 keepers. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur were nowhere to be seen. The official conclusion was that the storms must have somehow caused the keepers to be swept off the cliff due to these stormy conditions. But it has always been a questionable solution to this mystery. The popular 1912 poem Flannan Isle was written about these events, and this served as the main inspiration for the Doctor Who classic Horror of Fang Rock, where the Doctor investigates a lighthouse off the south coast of England in which 3 lighthouse keepers find themselves the victims of a Rutan, the shape-shifting enemies of the Centaurans. And at the end of the final part, the Doctor quotes none other than Flannan Isle itself as he and Leela depart. It's one of the most explicit inspirations for any Doctor Who story, and I love how it explores such an unsettling, mysterious historical event. But unfortunately, whenever you look into the Flannan Isle mystery, you'll find that a lot of the interesting quirks about the original disappearances were fabricated, such as a meal having been laid out and uneaten, suggesting the men were suddenly disturbed. This wasn't true. And there were also reports of unusual logbook entries referring to aggressive storms and the men having emotional breakdowns before this ominous final entry. Although these logbook entries were just fictional additions to the story that came years after it actually took place. But despite all of this, nobody knows for sure what happened in that cold and stormy December exactly 1 year after the lighthouse was first built. We will never be certain of the fate that befell James Ducat, Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur, which really does make you wonder. The Eaters of Light, the Roman 9th Legion. The Roman Empire is widely seen as one of the most powerful and dominant empires in all of human history. However, this legacy isn't without mystery, because the 9th Spanish Legion seems to have completely vanished from historical records after 120 AD, with no explanation for what actually happened to the Legion. This wasn't just like a tiny group of soldiers, it was a sizable infantry force with around 5,400 soldiers within it, but nobody knows their ultimate fate. There are theories that they ended up in the Netherlands after 120 AD, but the commonly held belief is that they were last noted as marching into Scotland before they were never heard of again. Doctor Who's Eaters of Light took this idea and revealed that the Ninth Legion fell victim to the titular creature, with the survivors sacrificing themselves to stop the aliens alongside the Picts they were originally fighting. The episode is weak in my opinion, but it's a nice attempt to answer such an intriguing mystery. Historians and scholars, even to this day, don't agree on what exactly happened to those 5,400 Roman soldiers. But for them to seemingly vanish without a trace will always be a strange anomaly which has earned them the title of the Lost Legion. The Talons of Wen Qian, the Whitechapel Murders. The tale of the Whitechapel Murders is a very chilling string of at least 5 murders committed in the streets of London in the autumn of 1888. These were brutal killings of women at the hands of a still unidentified serial killer known simply as Jack the Ripper. From the moment these murders were first reported, they gripped the public imagination, and it has always remained one of the darkest mysteries in UK history. And when it came to crafting the final episode of Doctor Who Season 14, writer Robert Wholmes took heavy inspiration from these events, with the serial exploring the Doctor attempting to solve the mystery of young women going missing at the hands of the villainous Li Sen Chang and 51st century criminal Magnus Grill. Whilst the story of Jack the Ripper is only a minor influence on the serial, it is still interesting to see how it helped set the backdrop of the story, which is itself set just 4 years after the killings. The Chase, the Mary Celeste. Ghost ships have always been fascinating maritime mysteries. These are usually ships found floating along without any living crew aboard. One of the most iconic of these is the Mary Celeste in 1872. The ship had been travelling from New York to Genoa, Italy in order to deliver 1,701 barrels of alcohol. On board were Captain Benjamin Briggs, his cousin and also wife Sarah, their infant daughter, and 7 crew members who were carefully handpicked by Briggs for the relatively routine trading mission. However, after nearly a month at sea, the Mary Celeste was discovered around 340 miles off the coast of Portugal, and there was absolutely no sign of Briggs, his family, or any of his 7 crew. But strangely, there was no sign of any kind of incident on board the boat, and all 1,701 barrels of cargo remained completely intact, so it didn't seem like pirates had got to them or anything like that. The ship's lifeboat was missing, but there was nothing to indicate that there was any kind of rush to leave the ship, and pretty much everything was untouched besides a few papers and navigational instruments were missing. To this day, nobody knows exactly what happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste, but Doctor Who had one simple answer: the Daleks did it. Yes, in Season 2's The Chase, the Doctor and his companions encounter the evil Pepperpots on board the Mary Celeste, where they cause havoc and the crew abandons the ship to escape the monsters. It's a small aspect of a globe-trotting serial, but it draws from the historical mystery in such a fun and creative way. After all, there's nothing to say the Daleks weren't involved. The Christmas Invasion, the Beagle 2 probe. It's hard to imagine any of 2005's The Christmas Invasion was grounded in reality, given how it was all about robot Santas, killer Christmas trees, and tribal aliens who fly asteroids. However, the Guinevere 1 probe from the beginning was actually based on the Beagle 2 Mars lander, which was supposed to land on the surface of Mars on Christmas Day 2003. Unfortunately, contact was lost and the mission was declared a failure in February of 2004, rendering it a £44 million flop. This inspired Russell T Davies to use a similar situation as the catalyst for the events of the Christmas Invasion, seeing the Guinevere 1 probe intercepted by the Sycorax and causing them to target Earth. Sadly, there was no blood stored within the Beagle 2 lander. It's a shame about that. Interestingly though, the mystery of Beagle 2's fate was actually solved in 2015, appearing on the surface of Mars in pictures from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. It turns out that the Beagle 2 had successfully landed safely, but 2 of its solar panels failed, so it couldn't communicate back to the European Space Agency. That part isn't really relevant, but I just thought it'd be interesting to note what actually happened to the probe that helped inspire the Christmas Invasion. The Shakespeare Code, Love's Labour's Won. Possibly the most famous and well-known playwright of all time is William Shakespeare, the influential bard who created over 1,700 words still used today. His works were immensely popular, and even to this day, his plays are still studied at an academic level. As far as we know, Shakespeare wrote either 37 or 38 plays during his time, but it is entirely possible that there was a 39th which has been lost to time. Indeed, books in 1598 and 1603 both make references to the existing play Love's Labour's Lost and Love's Labour's Won, a play of which there is no other record of. It creates an interesting historical mystery. What if Shakespeare wrote a sequel to Love's Labour's Lost and the scripts were destroyed, or it was only ever performed once or twice before flopping and being quietly erased from records at the time? Unfortunately, this seems incredibly unlikely. First of all, Elizabethan playwrights barely ever wrote sequels for comedies, so even though the Shakespearean weddings at the end of Love's Labour's Lost are uncharacteristically delayed for a year, there is no proof that this was intended to leave room for a sequel. In addition to this, most evidence seems to point towards Love's Labour's Won simply being an alternative title for another Shakespeare play, either Much Ado About Nothing, which was written around 1598 and had some similarities to Love's Labour's Lost, or The Taming of the Shrew, written between 1590 and 1592. It's important to know that at the time there was another play called A Shrew and another called The Shrew. It's a whole complicated history and nobody really knows what came first or which inspired which. Anyway, my point is that it's entirely possible that for a while Shakespeare used the title Love's Labour's Won as a way to differentiate his play from these others. So there probably wasn't a whole secret play. That, however, didn't stop Doctor Who's The Shakespeare Code exploring the possibility that the play was real and it was simply destroyed during the destruction of the evil Carrionites, an event that then inspired Shakespeare to write Macbeth and Hamlet. Personally, I prefer to believe that's what happened. It's a bit more fun that way. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, Mysterious Lights at Wardenclyffe. Despite the name being ruined by the world's richest man-child, Tesla was actually the surname of one of the most influential and important scientists of the 19th and 20th centuries. One of Tesla's biggest contributions was to the field of electricity, and his crowning jewel was intended to be Wardenclyffe Tower, a revolutionary intercontinental wireless communication and power transmitter to basically do what the internet does now. Man just wanted to send memes around the world, who can blame him? However, the project ran out of funding in 1906 and was abandoned, never becoming operational as Tesla's reputation diminished at the hands of Thomas Edison and other influential people. Mysteriously though, on the night of the 14th of July 1903, the tower reportedly came alive and shot bright flashes into the sky, an event which was never commented on by Tesla or anyone working at the tower. To date, this seems like the only time the tower ever did anything like this, and it came the same day that investor JP Morgan refused to continue financing the Wardenclyffe project. Whether it was some kind of show of defiance by Tesla or a crazy supernatural event will never be known. Doctor Who, of course, decided to reveal it as the latter. In Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, the protagonists meet the titular scientist, who becomes the target of the evil Skithra. To defeat the villains, the Doctor hooks her TARDIS up to Wardenclyffe Tower, and the resulting outburst of electricity forces the aliens to flee Earth. It's always been a bit of a mystery as to how the Wardenclyffe Tower created such a blast of electricity in the real world, but it does make a lot of sense if it was actually an infinitely powerful time and space machine powering it. Even though the activation of Wardenclyffe Tower remains a historical mystery, there are all sorts of explanations, and with everything, I will always champion the idea that aliens did it. Inferno. Project Mohole. In the early 1960s, scientists began Project Mohole, which was an attempt to drill through Earth's crust to get samples of the, and bear with my attempt at pronunciation here, the Mohorovičić discontinuity, or in non-science nerd terms, that bit between the crust and the mantle. Even though the project was defunded in 1966, it was the first successful test of deep ocean drilling techniques, reaching an impressive 601 feet below the seafloor and proving it was possible to drill into the Earth's mantle, paving the way for many subsequent projects drilling into the planet's surface, both on land and sea. The story of Project Mohole would go on to inspire Don Houghton when terrestrial Dix approached him to write for Doctor Who's 7th season. The story would become the now acclaimed Inferno, which centres around an ambitious drilling project going wrong, with the Doctor travelling to a parallel universe where the drilling causes a massive volcanic eruption. At one point it was even titled the Mohole Project, paying homage to the drilling project it was directly inspired by, although as far as we can tell, no mysterious and infectious green ooze was actually involved in the event. Yeah, I know, outrageous, isn't it? Flux, the Williamson Tunnels. Doctor Who Series 13 is known for a number of weird things, one of which being the Tunnel Man Joseph Williamson, who showed up every now and then to mutter about tunnels or something like that. It was kind of weird. This all resulted in the reveal that he had been building tunnels underneath Liverpool and discovered gateways to other worlds and time periods, which ultimately helped the Doctor and her friends reunite and save the day. And as bizarre as they seem, these tunnels are completely real. Of course, as far as we know, they don't actually lead to other planets or time periods, but Joseph Williamson was a very eccentric man. And after he amassed a fortune through the tobacco trade and the merchant industry, he began to construct a maze of tunnels underneath the city of Liverpool. This began in 1810 and ended with his death in 1840, but during his life he never actually explained why he was building these tunnels. Many have theorised that it was for quarrying purposes, and some have speculated that it was simply a means of providing employment to the many jobless people after the Napoleonic Wars ended. Ever since 1995, these tunnels have gradually been excavated, and now you can even take guided tours through the currently uncovered sections. However, almost no information about the construction survives. Even most of Williamson's life only comes from accounts of James Stonehouse after the eccentric man's death. Whatever reason Williamson had to construct these giant labyrinth-like tunnels, we may never know, which is deeply mysterious and kind of ominous. Was it just a commercial venture, or did Williamson know something we don't? Was he predicting some kind of cataclysm that would drive us underground for shelter? Was it an attempt to store or hide something he had come across during his time as a merchant businessman? We will probably never discover the answers, but as more sections of the tunnel are discovered and excavated, we may yet find out. The Curse of the Black Spot. Henry Avery's disappearance. Captain Henry Avery was one of the most infamous of the Western pirates, sailing under the Black Flag for just 2 years, but still earning the title of the King of Pirates as he terrorised the high seas in the Fancy, one of the fastest vessels to ever sail the Atlantic at the time. Despite he and his crew's many horrific crimes and acts of violence, Avery's exploits captured the public's imagination, especially as he went toe-to-toe with the Grand Mogul's fleet and raiding what might just be the single richest ship to ever be taken by pirates, with spoils between £200,000 and £600,000, almost destroying the East India Company 200 years early. However, such a big and ambitious raid immediately made Avery and his crew marked men. Well, more marked than usual, that is. Because as far as we know, this was the first ever worldwide manhunt in recorded history. After distributing the spoils amongst themselves, Avery and his remaining crew were sheltering in the Atlantic colonies, particularly the Bahamas, where he completely vanishes from history along with 89 crew members. The other 24 were captured and 5 executed, but none could give any indication of where their captain had gone because he had told them all conflicting stories of where he planned to travel to. Doctor Who attempted to answer this mystery with the Curse of the Black Spot, stipulating that Avery and a smaller crew became menaced by an alien medical computer, culminating in Avery piloting the spaceship off into the stars. To this day, nobody knows what actually happened to Henry Avery, who disappeared into the night as one of the most successful pirates in history. Many have tried to explain his fate, some suggesting he quietly died in poverty as a cruel twist of irony, with another saying he changed his name and peacefully lived a modest life in Devon. However, there is no reliable proof for any of these claims, and it remains a fascinating mystery that such an infamous figure and his crew could disappear without a trace, despite everyone in the world looking for them and their treasures. So, the next time you look up into the night sky, take a long look at all those constellations. Because, well, you never know, Captain Henry Avery might still be out there, travelling the endless expanse just as he did with the oceans all those years ago. So, those are just a few of the fascinating stories behind Doctor Who narratives. There were a bunch I left out, such as Silbury Hill inspiring the demons, and the haunting of Villa Diodati being influenced by the unusually stormy conditions of the real-world event. But I thought these weren't really interesting or notable enough to talk about, because it would be weird to go from the mysterious disappearance of a legendary pirate captain to, oh yeah, Switzerland had a weird storm in the summer for a couple of nights. Huh. That's weird. I wanted to focus on the ones with a lot of meat to them, with plenty of intrigue behind them. A lot of these mysteries simply have no answer to them, providing a wealth of storytelling potential, whilst other events are just interesting sources of inspiration, like the Beagle 2 probe, giving you an insight into the creative minds of Doctor Who writers. If you've made it this far, then I hope you're as interested in all this stuff as I am. I would love to hear some of your theories about some of today's mysteries, and whether I should cover more real-life events like this. But for now, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. And an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Platinum level patrons Maximilian Foreman and Nyx Games, and all of my Gold level patrons Boots, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Francois AK Line Vortex, Herna Verzog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.